Hey, in this video I'll be talking about the full Bleach second box set. You might be thinking, damn, it's been a long fucking time since you uploaded the first Bleach box set video. And my excuse for that is, look at how many fucking volumes there is. Do you see? That's 26 volumes. Plus the Akamaru one-shot, which I will talk about definitely. I'll be pretty much going through every volume individually, telling you what happened in that volume, and telling you my thoughts, like was it good and etc etc. But before that, I want to show you the actual Bleach box set, like outside. Like, if you didn't know, the second Bleach box set has one connecting image. Like, look, there's the Shikai for Ichigo. It wraps around to this side, where's Ichigo, and then you can see Hitsugaya's hair, which also connects to the final side. So it's a fully connecting image. And as you can see, there's also this inside image. Yeah, for the poster, I've already put it up. This is one of the sides. I didn't really like either side, but this was the better one. So this is how the other side looks. So yeah, I suppose no more stalling. Let's get right into it. The first volume of this box set features Ulquiorra on volume 22. And there is pretty much only one thing that happens in this volume, or I suppose two. The first thing is Yami and Ulquiorra going to the world of the living. Their mission was to kill Ichigo, and they failed, but they saw the potential in Ichigo. We saw Ichigo cut off Yami's left arm, and we see that everyone around them pretty much passed out from how strong their spiritual pressure is. And Ichigo was going to lose until Urahara showed up, and that's pretty much all that happened. I suppose also Hitsugaya, Rangiku, Renji, and Rukia showed up. Also Ikkaku, and I forget what this guy's name is, but he showed up as well. That's pretty much all that happens. Moving on to volume 23, featuring Ikkaku. In this volume, there is an attack by four of the Arankars, and we see their fights. The Hitsugaya fight, the Renji, and man, I don't remember the Arankars' names except for Grimjo, who went to fight Ichigo. But that particular fight doesn't really take place in this volume. I think it's in the next volume, which features Grimjo. But we see Ikkaku's Bankai, which was hype as fuck. Now, honestly, I have watched all the anime for this, so this is more just like rereading memories or just remembering what happens in these volumes. So yeah, moving on to volume 24, as I just said, it features Grimjo. Alright, in this volume there are pretty much two things that happen, or maybe three. First is the Renji, Hitsugaya, and Rangiku using the Geite Kaija? I don't remember exactly how it's called, but pretty much their limiters get removed and they kill their opponents. And half of the volume is just Ichigo versus Grimjo, so that was pretty fucking cool. I really like that fight, but that fight gets cut short when Tosen arrives and stops Grimjo, asking him, what the hell do you think you're doing, and you have to talk to Aizen now. Next is volume 25, featuring Ichigo's Hollow. Oh yeah, one thing before I continue, we meet Shinji in this volume, I'm pretty sure, in this volume. In this volume, pretty much Ichigo trains to control his hollowification alongside the Vizards watching over him. If I'm not mistaken, Ichigo had the longest fight against his Hollow in their history, so that was pretty interesting. Then there was also Orihime and Chad's training as well, and also the true objective of why they're there. Next is volume 26, who is this girl, which I don't know who she is. Honestly, I have no fucking idea. Alright, well, skipping through this volume to try to remember who she is, I remember Grimjo lost his arm in the fight against Ichigo, so she was the temporary number 6 before Grimjo got back his spot, and she had that like many fucking hands ability, which was like pretty interesting, I guess. Then, as you could probably make out by what I just said, there was a second raid from Hueco Mundo to the world of the living, and that was really interesting. Of course, insane fights, and seeing how this temporary number 6 fought, I really thought he was going to win in like a 3v1. That was insane. But then at the end of this volume, Orihime gets captured by Ulquiorra, or not exactly captured just yet, but Ulquiorra says, follow me, or something among those lines. I don't remember. Next is volume 27, featuring Orihime. Alright, in this volume, there are a couple things that happen. First is the end of the raid from Hueco Mundo to the world of the living. Then there was also the Grimjo versus Shinji fight, which was actually surprisingly really interesting. Orihime gets captured and goes to Hueco Mundo, and Grimjo's left arm gets healed by Orihime, and Grimjo kills the temporary number 6 to regain his spot. So that was really cool. And to finish this volume off, Ichigo and his squad went to Hueco Mundo to save Orihime, not Renji and Rukia yet. Then next volume is 28, 28 featuring this guy. I remember him. I don't remember his name, but he was a cool character. All right, this volume was actually really good. Pretty much, Chad and Ishida show Ichigo how strong they've gotten by killing the two hollows that were attacking them, not letting Ichigo really do anything. Then there's also Renji and Rukia arriving in Hueco and hitting Ichigo, saying, "Did you really think that we wouldn't help our friend? And how lowly do you think of us?" Which is a pretty cool moment, I guess. There was also the entire Espada meeting, which that was also really hype. And also, one thing I want to mention is that there is a double lead color page. I don't know how to explain it, but look, this is a lead color. Usually, there is just... when there's a lead cover, there's usually just this colored. There's a total of 3 pages colored, but Kubo this time went for 5, and this was one of the colored pages. So yeah, that was really cool. And also in this volume, we meet Nellie L, which she is one of my favorite characters in the series. I fucking love Nellie L. She's so funny. Also, when she powered up, that was really cool. Then there's volume 27 featuring this lady. I don't know her name. I think it's her with like Baum something. She fought against Ishida. In this volume, pretty much, they get to Las Noches finally, and there's 5 different paths. They all go their separate ways. Bombo Chaka ends up going with Renji on accident. Nell gets to Ichigo, and I don't remember this guy's name, but he gets to Ishida. Ishida fights this lady, which was a pretty cool fight. In this volume also, Chad unlocks a new form. I'm not sure if Ishida finished the fight here with this lady. And also what I forgot to mention is that there was the fight against this guy in the previous volume, but it got finished in this volume. I really like this guy. He's actually a really cool character. Underrated. Then there is volume 30 featuring Cayenne, but actually it is the 9th Espada. Alright, in this volume, it confirms that Ishida finished the fight with this lady in the previous volume. Chad beats his opponent, and the 5th Espada goes to fight Chad, and it goes absolutely horrible for Chad. He loses immediately. There's also the encounter between Ulquiorra and Ichigo right at the end of this volume. But the main thing in this volume is Rukia versus the 9th Espada, which was actually a really good fight. Rukia pretty much only won by technicality because everything other than the last part of how she won, the 9th Espada absolutely dominated her pretty much. Yeah, that fight was really cool. I think that's all that happens in this volume. Oh yeah, there's also the Octava Espada. I like how that sounds, but I hate the character that has the Octava rank. I hate that guy, man. Yeah, Renji fought him, so yeah. Next is volume 31. I swear to God, I tried, like, every time his name was pronounced, I tried to read it in my head and it took me 5 times. Let me find his name. Guys, I finally found his name. Sayalaporograns. That was totally right, man. I hate his name. It's so hard to pronounce. Alright, in this volume, pretty much all that happens is not actually a lot that happens with Sayal Aporo. The first, like, 2 or 3 chapters is Ichigo versus Ulquiorra, or more like Ulquiorra absolutely destroying Ichigo, but like, whatever. Then there's the continuation of Sayal Aporo versus Senji, and then also being accompanied by Ishida later on. And the final chapters of this volume is Grimjo versus Ulquiorra, because Grimjo wants to heal Ichigo so he can fight him, but Ulquiorra says that's unnecessary. So they fight, and Ulquiorra gets sealed for like a little bit, and so Grimjo versus Ichigo can happen because Orihime agrees to heal him after Ichigo says okay to heal him so they can fight. And moving on to volume 32 featuring Grimjo. This volume is pretty much only Grimjo versus Ichigo. In the anime, I like this more, but this was not a bad fight in the manga. Like, there were pretty much 3 fights I really wanted to see in this entire box set. Grimjo versus Ichigo, Ichigo versus Ulquiorra, and Ichigo versus Aizen. Those 3 fights I really wanted to see, and also I kind of wanted to see the Ichimaru's betrayal, but yeah. It wasn't as good as I remembered in the anime, but it was still a really good fight. There was a little backstory of how Grimjo got to the position he's in, like how he leveled up to an Espada rank, how he had to kill his like comrades pretty much. So that's pretty much all that happens in this volume. Oh no, there's actually one little extra. There is like a little side story of Hitsugaya's backstory pretty much, how he like how no one really wanted to talk to him, and how Rangiku told Hitsugaya when she was just passing by that he was killing his grandma with just his presence, which I'm assuming is because he was freezing her to death because Hitsugaya couldn't really control his powers back then, and since he was like a genius or something, he already had his powers before even a Zanpakuto, or like slightly, but he couldn't control them. Next volume is 33 featuring Noitora, the 5th Espada. Alright, as you could probably tell from as who features on this volume, the first chapter is when Noitora took advantage of a weakened Ichigo after the Grimjo versus Ichigo fight, and he absolutely obliterates Ichigo pretty much. But then Neliel gets at least temporary back her old Espada form, which we didn't even know before, but she was the third strongest Espada. She gets her form back and fights Noitora, and we get her backstory of how she was an Espada, but she didn't really like to fight, and she was around Noitora because he was weaker than her, and she had to like watch over him because of that. And we saw how she lost her power and pretty much fought from grace. And also there is the continuation of Sayal Apro versus Renji Ishida, and also Dondo Chaka and her brother, and getting serious and fighting Sayal Apro for real, because now they're saying if our Lord Neliel decides she wants to fight, then we will help her or something like that. And then next volume is volume 34 featuring Neliel, but in her Espada form. Right, in this volume there's the continuation of both the fights I previously mentioned, but this time Neliel actually loses to Noitora, but then Zaraki steps in and then starts fighting Noitora, which that fight was actually really cool. I didn't remember it being that cool and interesting, honestly. Then there is the continuation of the Sayal Aparo fight, but as you probably could tell, the captains arrived and started fighting all the Espadas. Byakuya arrived and started fighting the 7th Espada, I think, and Kurotsuchi started fighting Sayal Aparo, and he trapped Sayal Aparo in his trap and pretty much slowed down time for everything. And he said 1 second for us is probably like 100 years for you. That was a really cool fight. And finally the Sayal Aparo fight ended, and the next volume is volume 35 featuring Kurotsuchi, and pretty much almost the entire volume is Zaraki versus Noitora, which I fucking love that fight. It was a continuation from volume 34, and I absolutely loved that fight. There was the final chapter of Kurotsuchi versus Sayal Aparo, and then the last chapter, Aizen and the top 3 Espada go to raid Karakura town in the world of the living. So that was really fucking cool. Next is volume 36, which I'm pretty sure is Ukitake. Like, I don't remember any other captain. Maybe it's Shinji. It's either Shinji or Ukitake. Alright, this is the volume I really wanted to talk about in this video. I just confirmed this is Shinji, and this volume is pretty much the backstory of how Shinji and his squad, or the Vizards, became who they are. And I fucking love this volume. I read this in one sitting. This was so interesting, I swear to God. I could not stop reading. This volume's content transfers over a little bit to volume 37, and yeah, this volume is really interesting. Next is volume 37 featuring this guy who's in squad 11, friends with Ikaku. He's the 5th seat, but he's pretty much the 4th seat in strength. I just can't remember his name, honestly. Alright, in this volume, the first half is pretty much setting up later volumes like the Ichigo versus Ukiura, then Renji, Rukia, and Chad fighting against this like executioner squad. Also, the second strongest Espada sending his troops, these 4 pillars, to get Karakura town back in the world of the living, because there is a revelation that this is not the Karakura town, that this is just a copy pretty much, and the real Karakura town is in Soul Society. And the only thing preventing the original Karakura town coming back into place is the 4 pillars, which Ikaku, Kira, Shuhei, and this guy protect. I just can't remember his name. And pretty much the other half of the volume is him fighting one of the subordinates of the second strongest Espada. And the last chapter is like setting up other fights against the Espada's subordinates. Volume 38 features Shuhei. Alright, in this volume, pretty much there is the Kira versus subordinate fight, which was, I guess, pretty interesting. Then there was the Shuhei versus subordinate fight, which was better. Then we see that Ikaku actually loses, and he's the only one protecting the pillars that actually loses, which like L, but whatever. Komamura goes to help out Ikaku to finish the subordinate off and uses Bankai Kokujo Tengen Myo. Yeah, that was pretty cool, I guess. Then there is the Soifon second squad vice captain fight against the subordinate, which is pretty cool. Nothing much else to note here. Yeah, then there is volume 37 featuring, I'm pretty sure that's Tosen, but I'm really not sure about this one. Alright, in this volume there's a bunch of fights against the subordinates, but looking over this volume I realized this is not Tosen, but this is actually the 3rd Espada's subordinates like summon, I guess you could say. Like each of the 3 subordinates cuts off an arm to spawn this monstrosity, and it is absolutely brutally strong. Rangiku stands no chance, and it was so strong that the general captain himself goes to fight it and absolutely obliterates it, but like still. And the last chapter or 2 chapters are pretty much back in Kwekamundo with Renji, Chad, and Rukia still fighting the executioner squad, and Ichigo fighting with Ukiura, which, speaking of Ukiura, volume 40 features Ukiura in his resurrection state. And as this cover may suggest, the entire volume is just Ichigo versus Ukiura, which insane. Absolutely love this volume. Okay, not exactly all of it, but like half a chapter was Ishida fighting Yami, which really good. But the volume ends with Orihime screaming, "Save me, Ichigo," or something. Absolutely 10 out of 10 volume, but volume 11 features Yami, which finishes the Ichigo versus Ukiura fight, which, as I said earlier, in this entire box set, I was waiting for 3 fights. Grimjo versus Ichigo, Ukiura versus Ichigo, and Aizen versus Ichigo. And I think from those 3 fights, Ukiura versus Ichigo was the best one. And it was the only one which I preferred the manga for, rather than the anime. In the anime, I preferred Grimjo versus Ichigo a lot more, and for the Aizen fight, I will explain later when I'm there. That's pretty much the first half of the volume. Then there's a chapter of where we see that Yami is actually the 0th Espada, and the Espada's spots go from 0 to 9, not 1 to 10. So that was actually really interesting. So Zaraki and Byakuya, they take that fight from Renji, Rukia, and Chad's hands, and they fight it themselves. That was really interesting. The second half of the volume is pretty much back in the world of the living. So there's 2 things that happen in the second half of the volume. First is Hitsugaya versus the 3rd Espada, which the last line in this volume goes so fucking hard. He pretty much said, "I will use the atmosphere's water to my advantage with my Zanpakuto." Dude, that was insane. Do you know how overpowered that is? And the second thing that happened in the second half of the volume is the second strongest Espada taking his resurrection form, which anything he touches dies of old age. That's fucking insane. That fight goes on for a while. Moving on to volume 42, featuring the 3rd Espada. Okay, so there's actually a lot of things that happen in this volume. First is the continuation fight of Soifon and her vice captain fighting against the second strongest Espada, which that fight I think goes on to later volumes. Then the fire around Aizen, Ichimaru, and Tosen finally ends, and Tosen starts to fight Shuhei. Then the Vizards arrive and they fight against the bunch of, how are they called again? I really don't remember what they're called, but a bunch of these things, as you can probably see on screen. Yeah, that's pretty much all that happens in this volume. She doesn't die yet. Then we move on to volume 43, featuring the second strongest Espada in his resurrection form. I forgot to mention completely that pretty much half of this volume is just the fight against the first strongest Espada. So that was really interesting. And yeah, then in this volume, pretty much half of the volume is just the fight against the second strongest Espada. We learn his backstory, which he was the king of Hueco Mundo. That's an insane fucking title. But I guess with his power, he kind of deserves it. The Vizards continue to fight, and Aizen, with some provocation, cuts down Hikori, I think that was her name, in half. Dude, that was insane. I was thinking, okay, I watched the anime, and there's no fucking way she doesn't die. I knew she was going to survive some way, but I just couldn't remember. And then they said Orihime might be able to heal you, which, yeah, that actually makes kind of sense. But how could she survive so long that Orihime could get there in time and heal her? I mean, I suppose the like ceiling guy, but like whatever. And then moving on to volume 44, featuring Tosen. Alright, this volume pretty much has 2 events. First is Shinji and the Vizards versus Aizen, and the second thing is Komamura and Shuhei versus Tosen. Tosen was absolutely obliterating them, okay? If he had stayed in his hollowed form, he could have beat them easily, like no competition. But he gets his vision, and I remember watching the anime, I was like, okay, there is no way they win. Like, Tosen is so fucking overpowered now. But then Shuhei just kills him because he says, when you were blind, you could have detected me. But because he was starting to rely on his vision, because for the first time in his life he could see, he couldn't detect him, and he dies in this volume. Or not yet dies, it's like he's basically dead. And in volume 45, and featuring the general captain, Tosen finally dies, and he says, "Thank you, Komamura, for being such a good friend." And he says to Shuhei, "Please come closer, I can still somewhat see. Let me see your face, Shuhei." And before he could see, like, I was thinking in my head, okay, there's just no way this is not a sabotage. But before anything else could happen, he explodes and dies. Dude, that was insane. This volume is one of my favorites in the series. I'm going to explain with 2 lines. What the heck do you guys think you're doing? That line single-handedly was insane. I was watching the anime and my heart straight up dropped. Like, holy shit, they were winning. Everything was going fine. And then it turned out Aizen was using Kyoka Suigetsu. And the second thing I'm going to mention is that how long have you been under the impression that I wasn't using Kyoka Suigetsu? Dude, this volume is so fucking insane. I love it. And the other half of the volume is the general captain versus Aizen, which Aizen even said on a one-on-one battle, Aizen could not defeat him. But because he had developed an Aran card that had like the power to completely neutralize his power, he lost barely. So this volume was insane. Then moving on to volume 46, featuring Rangiku. There are pretty much 3 things that happen in this volume. First is Ichigo versus Aizen, which, man, it was another fucking slaughter. This is the second time Ichigo gets absolutely obliterated. The second thing is Urahara, Ichigo's dad, and Yoruichi showing up to fight Aizen, which midway through I was actually thinking, damn, they might actually win. Like, pause. Low-key, they might be winning. But then Aizen obliterates them. And the third thing is Ichigo versus Ichimaru, which of course, really good fight, but it carries on in the next volume. I'm not really sure why Rangiku is the cover of this volume, but whatever. Then there is volume 47 featuring Ichimaru. In this volume, there's pretty much 2 or 3 main things that happen. The first thing is that Urahara, Yoruichi, and Ichigo's dad lose. The second thing is that Ichigo starts to train the final Getsuga Tensho. And the final thing, actually I guess 4 things, because Aizen arrives in Karakura town, and we can see by his aura that how strong he's become. His presence just annihilates everything. Just being in his presence, people almost passed out. And if they were closer, they would have actually passed out. And the second thing is Ichimaru's telling Rangiku that she's a nuisance and killing her, when in reality he left her alive and masked her presence pretty much. And the last volume in this box set is volume 48, and I think you could guess what could happen in this volume, which ends the Arankarar. To tell you simply, volume 48 features Aizen, and as you can see, he's in his Hogyoku form, and I guess you could probably figure out what this means. Pretty much means Aizen has fused with the Hogyoku, and now he is unstoppable. There's 3 things that happened in this volume. First is Ichimaru's betrayal, which I was actually looking forward to this entire box set, and it was really good, but I preferred the anime for this. The second thing is Ichigo arriving and having unlocked the final Getsuga Tensho, and of course the third thing, Ichigo fighting Aizen, which I slightly preferred the anime for this as well. From the 3 fights that I really wanted to see in this box set, Grimjo versus Ichigo, Ukiura versus Ichigo, and Aizen versus Ichigo, the only one that I preferred the manga for was Ukiura versus Ichigo. In the anime, Mugetsu, or Final Getsuga Tensho, had more impact, I feel like. So yeah, this volume was still really fucking good. I enjoyed it very much. The art was actually insane in this volume. And the ending to this volume was actually pretty, I guess you could say sad, but I didn't really feel sad. Like, I felt like I should be sad though. Ichigo lost all his powers and he couldn't see Renji Rukia or anything society related because he lost all his spiritual powers from using Final Getsuga Tensho. That was the trade-off. And of course, Aizen loses because Kisuke steps in and uses Hado Kido, or I don't remember which one it was, but seals Aizen. And Aizen gets sentenced to 20,000 years in the underworld, which, god damn, he was trash talking Central 46 even after he was captured. Like, god damn, this guy's confidence. But that's understandable though. And that's it. I suppose we should talk about this extra pilot chapter that was also included. I really appreciated Viz for including this in the box set, as this was the chapter that was published in Akamaru before Bleach was published. It was like, if you don't know what Akamaru is, it's pretty much that has like pretty much I don't know how to explain it, but pretty much a lot of series publishes chapters before their serialization to see if they have a future or how the readers will see them, pretty much. I really don't know how to explain it, but tell you some names that were in Akamaru before being published. There was, of course, Bleach. Naruto published a one-shot in Akamaru before being serialized. Dr. Greyman was published. I think Beelzebub as well, but I'm not sure about that one. But there were still a few popular names there that were published there before serialization in another magazine. In this volume, this is pretty much like an early concept of Bleach. There were a few characters like Ichigo, Rukia, and Orihime, but there were a few noticeable differences. In the original story, when Rukia loses her powers, she becomes pretty much just a human. But in this one shot, she becomes really small. Like, she could take a bath in a cup. That's an interesting concept. And in this pilot chapter, it wasn't Orihime's brother that tried to kill Orihime. It was her dad. But the backstory was pretty much the same. Orihime was their sole light in their life. I don't know how to explain it, but pretty much the same backstory. But it seems it was refined a little bit before serialization in Weekly Shonen Jump. Like, there were already concepts there. Also, what I want to mention about this was that I like this unique take, or like seeing how Tite-Kubo thought Bleach would end up before it got serialized. Like, you could see the changes here. Like, Orihime didn't really trip on the stairs, but it was her dad that really pushed her off the edge, if I understood that correctly. But yeah, I like this concept. I like this addition to the box set. I think it wasn't just some useless stuff. Like in the previous box set, there was the travel guide, which was actually really, I didn't like it, honestly. Let's just put it like that. Also, here's every volume. Dude, there's so many. And look at this, there's more. All right, that's it. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Oh Oh my fucking god. Please be sure to like and subscribe as I post videos every single Monday. And damn. Anyways, I hope you have a great rest of your day and I hope to see you next time. Bye.